please welcome to the stage, Derek Jeter.
Derek Jeter!
Hello.
Derek Jeter! All right, ready to do this?
There's a lot of energy in this room. I just got here. I was a little intimidated on that last session you had.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm gonna. Not the one that was just the two before with
We're passionate about our ETFs. Those are
the Wonder
ETF
Woman
nerds.
costume and everything. So
Yeah.
I have
Well,
a
yeah,
costume
have a
in the.
little fun.
I have a costume in the car.
All right.
How are you?
All right, ready to get started?
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I want to take a moment to just sort of settle things down. Unfortunately, last week, the sports world lost a tremendous individual. You put a touching tribute to him on the Players Tribune, where you talked about some of the personal conversations that you had. Can you share with us any of those things that you and Kobe would talk about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thoughts and prayers go out to, Kobe's entire family and all the passengers and their families as well. You know, the thing with Kobe, he played on the West Coast, I played on the East Coast, so we really didn't spend a lot of time together. Really got to know him a little bit more once I retired. And just the thing that always stood out to me was how close he was with his family. You know, it started with me joking around because he had 4 daughters. And it seemed like, he never told me this, but it seemed like he kept going for the boy, kept going for the boy, and just kept having girls. And then now I'm in the same boat. I continue to have girls as well. So the whole situation is just completely it's awful, and words can't really describe how everyone that knew Kobe knows his family, the impact that he had on the game. I think he let other people talk about that, but what stood out with me was how close he was with his family and how supportive he was with his daughters especially.
All right, well, thank you for the thoughtful answer. Why don't we start with kind of your early days? So you're born in New Jersey, grew up in Kalamazoo. Those
Yes.
aren't exactly the biggest hotbeds for baseball.
You said that, I didn't say that. I think Kalamazoo's a hotbed for baseball.
But how did you know that you were gearing up for a career in baseball?
My father was shortstop. He played at Fisk University in Tennessee. And I always wanted to be, he was my first hero. I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to play baseball. My mom is one of 14. And I used to spend every summer in New Jersey. And my grandmother was a huge Yankee fan. So I just married the two together, and I wanted to be the shortstop for the New York Yankees my entire life. And I was very fortunate to get that opportunity.
So how does one get from Kalamazoo to the Bronx?
Still trying to figure it out. It was a long journey. I mean, it seemed like it was a long journey. I was drafted out of high school. I had signed to go play baseball at the University of Michigan. Yeah, right. Just checking. There's always at least a few University of Michigan grads. So I signed to go play at the University of Michigan, and I was drafted out of high school. I signed with the Yankees the day after my 18th birthday, and I went down to Tampa, Florida, rookie ball, and that's when I started my career. And you want to talk about completely overmatched and homesick and crying every day and couldn't figure it out and saying to myself, I made the wrong decision. I should have gone to college first. And then now to be sitting up here with you, John, it's been a long journey, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. This is what it was all coming to. Spend some time with me on the stage.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. But I actually want to talk a little bit about that decision between the University of Michigan and deciding to join the Yankees. Who helped you through that? Who gave you guidance? How did you kind of finally come to that decision? Because you had already signed to go to Michigan.
Yeah, my family. My family's big on education, and my dad has his PhD from Western Michigan University. And my mom is a former accountant, so they were big on education. I could never play sports unless I, got straight A's when I was in school and in high school. But I always wanted to be a professional baseball player, and my dream was to play for the Yankees, and I was drafted by the Yankees. So I was the first high school player drafted in the country, and really we felt as though if I went to school for 3 more years and then came out in the draft again, how much better how much higher in the draft would I go? So it was a tough decision, but I fortunately for me, I mean, it was an easy decision. I'm lying. It really wasn't a tough decision. It sounded good to say it, right? But it was a very easy decision for me, and I just got my career underway.
So one of the things people always talk about is your character and what a great person you are. I heard Buck Showalter told Michael Kay after meeting you for the first time that if this guy makes it to the big leagues, he'll never embarrass himself, his family, or the Yankees. Where did that come from to be able to sort of handle that with such grace and ease?
Well, first of all, there were no camera phones back then. So I think it was a lot. I don't know. You laugh, but I tell all our players now, you have to be careful. I mean, my career probably would have been about 2 or 3 years if there were camera phones back then. You know, it's just I've always took a lot of pride. You know, you always hear people say, so-and-so has a great image. You know, if they say that about me, I say, well, thank you. I appreciate it, but my goal isn't to have a great image. I think character is much more important than image. Image is how you want people to view you. Character is who you are as an individual. And I think if I was just walking around trying to have a good image, they would have figured that out after 20 years in New York. So my mindset has always been just don't embarrass my family. And, you know, I still have that mindset today.
Were there any veterans that sort of helped you along
Hold
that
on.
path?
Having said that, I have made plenty of mistakes. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, well, they haven't come to light then, let's say.
I just hide them well.
But no, were there veterans that sort of helped you kind of find that course and be a compass for you to sort of guide you through those early years as you were kind of learning the ropes?
Yeah, I learned quite a bit by watching and listening. You know, I've always shied away from the people that are in a room and they talk the most. Because if you talk all the time, people don't pay attention to what you say. So I've always been sort of a sponge for knowledge. I try to learn from as many people as I can. But I took bits and pieces from people, and not only their success, but their failures. You know, when I meet successful people, I always ask them, you know, what's the most difficult situation that you've been in?
You didn't ask me that backstage.
Well, I said when I meet successful people, I always ask them.
No worries.
We go way back, so
Yeah.
I can joke with them now.
Yeah, 15 minutes or so.
But I always try to find out, you know, what that was and how did you overcome it. And I think you can learn from other people's mistakes.
All right. So with that, though, you played in the Spotlight. It's not quite as big as the Inside ETF Spotlight here, but New York's got a pretty good media presence, for sure. But you never seem to have a misstep. How did you handle that pressure cooker? 'Cause that's different than character. That's, you know, they're looking for a story.
Well, I mean, look, everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has missteps along the way. I think one thing when you play in New York, people, the fans of New York, appreciate when you are accountable. They appreciate when you're responsible. I took a lot of pride in playing for that organization, the only organization I ever wanted to play for. I didn't want to embarrass my family. I didn't want to embarrass the organization. And I tried to be as accountable as possible. And when you make a mistake, you have to be the first one to admit your mistake, and then you try to learn from it. But one thing about New Yorkers is I've said it before about the fan base. In my mind, it's the greatest fans in the world. You know, they watch every game. They're very knowledgeable about the game. They have high expectations. They push you. They challenge you. But ultimately, they respect you. And that's what I wanted to gain from them was their respect.
All right. Well, you certainly did. That's absolutely true. Joe Girardi once said that you have a unique ability to focus in high-stretch situations, yet stay relaxed, something I'm struggling with right now. So take us through your mindset when the game is on the line and how you stay so cool.
I looked at it as it was fun. You know, we're playing a game. No matter how you look at it, you're playing a game. And it's a game of failure. I'm not afraid to fail. You know, someone asked me, do I like to win or I hate to lose? I like to win because losing doesn't cross my mind. You know, I just want to win in everything that I do. And, you know, when I've been in a big situation, I've struck out and I've made errors. Is that the worst that can happen? But my mind always goes back to any time that I had success. I remember I hit a game-winning three-point shot in high school basketball, right, in my 10th grade year. Every time the game was on the line, I wanted the ball so I could shoot because my mind always went back to being successful. And the other thing is I've prided myself on being prepared. That's why I'm uncomfortable right now.
Right.
You know, being unprepared it's something that makes me very, very uncomfortable. It's my biggest fear. So you hear athletes talk about games slowing down or speeding up. I think it slows down when you're prepared. It speeds up when you find yourself in a situation that you're not prepared for. And I think that works in any profession.
So did you have to train your mind, though, to like think back to that shot in 10th grade and from there to like sort of instill that confidence in yourself, or did it just come natural?
I think it just came naturally. It's just I always wanted to be in those big situations. I did. I wasn't afraid of it. And in my mind, I just felt as though I was always going to be successful. Now I wasn't. I was speaking to a group of kids in my foundation, and I had just got my 3,000 hit. And everyone was congratulating me. And I told these kids, I said, listen, I have 3,000 hits, but I've made 7,000 outs. I mean, that's not funny. There's nothing
It's a lot of
funny.
ABs, that's for sure.
There's nothing funny about it, but I made 7,000 outs. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, there's good and bad.
All right. Well, I think people have enjoyed the 3,000 more than the 7,000 for sure. I want to talk about Joe Torre, though, someone that's very special to you and important to you. Tell us about kind of how that relationship came about, what he meant to you as a player.
Yeah, Mr. T. He's, in my mind, he is the greatest communicator I've ever met. You know, you always hear the phrase, you treat everyone the same. You don't treat everyone the same. You treat everyone fairly, but you don't treat everyone the same because everyone has different personalities. You know, some teammates I've played with, you can yell and scream at them and that'll bring out the best. Other teammates, you got to give them a hug and you got to bring them in a corner and you got to talk to them and you got to settle them down. You'd be surprised at who those teammates are because some of them are in the Hall of Fame, but you know, it's the only way you're able to know the difference is to take the time to get to know the people that you're leading, and he was as good as they get.
So then, you know, that's sort of Joe Torre as the manager for you. What did he mean to you on a personal level going forward, you know, sort of now that you're retired?
Yeah, he's like a second father to me. I first came up in New York when I was 20 years old. I was 21 with Mr. T, and you know, you spend more time with your teammates and coaching staff than you actually do your own families. I mean, we're together for 30 games in spring training, 162 in the regular season. That's before it even counts. Then you go to the postseason. So you're together 200-something days a year, all day, every day. And he was like a second father to me. He was someone that was always honest with me. He trusted me, which is something you appreciate as a young player. Because a lot of young players come up and you know, you make a mistake, first thing you do is you look in the dugout and you look at your manager. And there's managers that throw their hands up and down in the air and pace back and forth, but he was always calm, and he had that calming influence on our team, and especially as a young player. But knowing him now, or getting to know him more throughout my career, you could always tell, if you look back, if there's any Yankee fans in here?
Oh, yeah.
So if you go back and look at some of the old highlights, you could always tell when Mr. T was upset or happy just how he wore his hat. He would tilt it back a little bit more when he was upset. But now go back, you'll see it, because that's how I just look at him and be like, oh man, I'm in trouble now, you know? This is strictly on how he wore his hat.
Is that good of a communicator? All he has to do is move it back and then you know you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Why did you always have him hold your bat?
Good luck. It started with Don Zimmer. You know, Zim, I had a great relationship with Zim. You know, he was someone that he passed away a few years back, but he was someone who had been in the game for 50 plus years. So you talk about someone that has seen basically everything imaginable in the game of baseball. He's that person. And like I told you before, I've always been a sponge for knowledge, so I found myself sitting next to Zim. I'd sit between Zim and Mr. T, and I started giving him my bat. Then I started rubbing his head, and then I started rubbing his stomach. And then I gave it to Mr. T. So it's a funny story. So for the Yankee fans, you might know this. The other ones who are not Yankee fans, bear with me. So after September 11th, we played, because of the tragic events, the World Series leaked into November. And I was the first batter in November, and I actually hit a home run to win a game. Now, that was Mr. T's last year of his contract. And baseball contracts go to October 31st. So he was holding my bat, and before I went on deck, I took the bat from him, and I said, look, your contract expires, so this is the last time I have to listen to you the rest of the series. And then I hit the home run, but I ended up giving him back the bat the rest of the series, but it didn't work out too well.
It happens to not give him the bat back at that point. But let's talk about some of the games and moments that you've had in baseball across the biggest stages possible. The one that sticks out to me that I have a very vivid memory of is the first game back at Yankee Stadium after 9/11.
Yeah.
Rumor has it that you gave, at the time, President Bush some advice on throwing out the first pitch. Can you share with us a little bit about what you talk about, what advice you gave to former President Bush?
See, normally when someone says rumor has it, I stop the conversation right there. But, you know, President Bush was at Yankee Stadium throwing out the first pitch, and there's Secret Service everywhere. I mean, they're lining the hallways. And at the old Yankee Stadium, the walk from the clubhouse to the batting cages, it seemed like it was a mile long. And like I said, you have security and police officers and Secret Service everywhere. So I walked down to the batting cage like I did before every game, and I see President Bush in there, and he's getting loose, and he said, "Derek, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing good." You know, I go and I take my swings, and I'm talking to him on the way out, and I said, "You know, I hear you're throwing out the first pitch." And he's like, "Yeah, you know, I'm just getting loose." And, you know, he said, "What do you think? Should I throw from the rubber?" I said, "Oh, yeah, you know, this is Yankee Stadium. I mean, they said you have to throw from the rubber. I mean, you know, who throws from in front of the rubber, in front of the mound? I mean, you got to get on the rubber. You're President of the United States." And he says, "All right, so I think I'm going to do that." And then right when I'm walking out, I turn around and I look at him and I said, "And don't bounce it." I said, because I said, "This is New York and they'll boo you." And I walked out. I didn't wait for a response. I just walked out. And then he gets up there and he throws a perfect strike.
Well, he played at Yale, right, or something like that, I think? Didn't he play a little college ball?
Yeah,
may
he was
have.
a former owner of the Rangers as well. So just to add to that story, they retired my number in New York a few years ago, and I had to throw out the first pitch, and I threw from in front of the mound.
What? How could you do that?
I know. It's intimidating throwing out the first pitch.
What was the atmosphere in the stadium like that night, though, with that being the first game back in the stadium after 9/11?
It was wild. It was, you know, for the first time in my career, I felt as though we were playing for something bigger than just the Yankee organization. You know, I felt as though it was our job to provide entertainment and a distraction, you know, to the city for just 3 hours a day. You're never going to heal what everyone had been through. Obviously, people are still healing from September 11th, but it was our job to provide that distraction. And for the first time, you know, when we played on the road, people were cheering for us as well, which was uncomfortable on its own. But it was one of the most exciting series that we played in, just because of the support that we got from everyone in New York. Unfortunately, it didn't end up the way we would have liked it to end up, but those games in New York were pretty exciting.
I just remember that was the entire city galvanizing behind the Yankees that year. It was really was a distraction and just an awesome run.
Yeah, and we lost, and in our 15-minute friendship that we've had, he's backstage asking me about my biggest losses, and that's not a lot of fun to talk about. So,
well, that's why we're not
else?
talking about that stuff out here, and we talked about it back there.
Yeah, but that set the tone very bad.
All right, well, we'll move on then. We'll move on. So you were the first Yankee to record 3,000 hits. What was the pressure like leading up to that? I mean, it had to be insane.
It was, you know, it was very uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable because in my mind, the only reason why you play a game is to win. That's it. You don't do it for personal accolades. You don't do it for statistics. If you play the game long enough and your mind is focused on winning, the stats will be there at the end of the day. But we're trying to win, and the focus in my mind has always been on winning. And then during this chase for 3,000 hits, the focus all of a sudden became all on me. And it was very uncomfortable for me. And, you know, I wanted to do it. The pressure that I put on myself was to do it at home because I wanted to do it in front of the fans in New York. And I was running out of games. And it came down to, you know, one of the last games before we had gone on to the All-Star break and then went on the road. So I felt as though if I didn't do it that particular day, I just wasn't going to do it. So I put pressure on myself to do it at home. But I assumed, I don't like to assume anything, but I assumed that I'd get a couple hits eventually, but
Yeah.
I was putting pressure on myself to do it in front of our fans.
So much pressure that you hit a home run. You couldn't have been too much pressure there that you were able to take Price deep.
Yeah, you know, there's some strange things that happen in Yankee Stadium. I'm telling you, man. I've told people that you know, haven't come up in the organization, new guys that we get, there's ghosts in Yankee Stadium, man. And if anyone tells me that there isn't, I have a lot of highlights I can point to because a lot of things, strange things happen in Yankee Stadium.
All right, I want to talk about two defensive plays real quick for you. The first one is the flip in Oakland. We talked about it a little bit back there. What I want to know is, as a shortstop, how were you even over on that first base line and involved in that play?
I was doing my job.
Doing your job.
I was doing my job. I was actually where I was supposed to be. I don't want to get too detail-oriented here in the room here because I'm sure there's probably not a lot of baseball fans, but I was doing my job. I was where I was supposed to be. My job is not to throw the runner out at the plate. It's to redirect the throw to third base. But I said it the other day, and there was a headline, but the Giambi family, for you Yankee fans in here, as a family, they're not very fast, right?
True. Fair enough.
So I knew we had an opportunity to get him at the plate, so I redirected the throw to home plate, and it was a big play in that series. Someone made a headline talking about me taking shots at the Giambi family, but it couldn't be a nicer family. I was just pointing out the facts.
How come Shane Spencer gets no credit for that throw?
Because he missed 2 cutoff, man. If he would have thrown it to one of the first 2 cutoff, man, he would have been out by 10 feet. So
All
I
right.
credit him for that too, because it's actually threw it over both cutoff men.
Yeah, Soriano and Tino, I think.
Yeah. Look at
Airman.
you, yeah.
Oh yeah, we're fans.
Yeah.
And then the other one we have to talk about is the play against Boston.
We don't have to talk about anything.
That's true.
Huh?
That's
No,
true.
I'm just-
We'll wrap
I'm
it
just
up.
playing. No, I'm just playing.
No, but the play against Boston, right? You just take off full steam, heading towards the stands. Did it go through your mind at all that the stands are creeping up? Were you just focused
Yeah.
on the ball, sort of?
You know, in the same series that we were facing Oakland, I was going after a foul pop-up, and same area, and I fell in the photographer's pit, which is all cement. And if you go back to that year, you can see that play. And then this particular year, we're playing Boston. Everyone says, oh, it was a great play. It really wasn't a difficult play. I mean, it's just catching a pop-up. It's the aftermath. And I, being prepared, right? I'm a big guy on being prepared. I figured if I just jump over the photographer's pit, I'll be fine because I'll just run into a fan. So this is all going through my head while I'm going to catch this pop-up. So I catch the pop-up, I jump over the photographer's pit, and there's 56,000 people in the stadium, and I jumped in the one seat with no fan. So it didn't feel so the point of the story is the photographer's pit does not feel good, neither do the stands on the other side of it. So yeah, it didn't work out too well either, but
Which play do you think better encapsulates you as a defensive player, though?
I don't know. I mean, it's I think in both situations, it's like I said before, is slowing the game down and preparing yourself and understanding that your job as a shortstop is to be moving on every play, and you do whatever it takes to win. That's the bottom line, and sometimes that's putting your body in jeopardy, but that's a part of it.
All right. So one more question kind of around your playing days. So you collected your final hit at Yankee Stadium, scores the winning run. It's bottom of the ninth. Are you thinking this is my last ever at bat at Yankee Stadium? Is that going through your mind? Is just winning the game going through your head? What are you thinking at that moment?
Well, going through my mind, my last at bat at Yankee Stadium should have been the previous at bat at Yankee Stadium. I was an emotional wreck playing that game. And it's interesting because I played parts of 20 years, and the only game that I played in Yankee Stadium that didn't count was my last game. It's the only game I played where we were eliminated from postseason play at Yankee
This is
Stadium,
an amazing stat, by the way.
which is ironic because it felt like a playoff-type atmosphere, and that's just because of the relationship that I've had with the fan base in New York. I grew up with the fan base in New York. 20 years old is when I came up, and I played until I was 40. And Yankee fans watch every game. So playing in that last game, it was very difficult. But I thought I was going to lose it. I was on the verge of tears, and we had the lead in the ninth inning. And I'm thinking to Joe Girardi, who I played with, take me out of the game. I'm looking at the dugout like he's going to take me out, right? This is the swan song, get me out of here before I screw it up. And then 2 straight home runs, and we're tied. And then I find myself on deck, coming to the plate with a runner on second, a chance to win the game, and I was kneeling down. And honestly, I said, dear God, if you have one more hit left in you, please let it be right here. And fortunately, I got that hit.
So that's a fairy tale ending. Did you take David Robertson and Richardson out to dinner for setting that up for you? Sort of.
I didn't. I didn't. It's funny because afterwards people said it was all scripted, right? This is all set up. Robertson was supposed to give up 2 home runs. Like, how do you do that? Like, who comes up with these theories?
Yeah, 'cause I'm sure
right?
he wanted that stat line of the 2 home runs given up as
Yeah.
well. I want to talk a little bit about the current game now and the use of data. What impact do you think that would have had on you in your career if all the defensive shifts and stuff like that were in place when you were playing?
Yeah, my career would have ended a lot sooner if all these analytics was around because, they use different formulas to rank players and evaluate players. I've said it jokingly before that if they were playing the shift as much when I was playing, I wish they played it against me because I think I'd still be playing if they were playing a shift because I think it's easy to hit a ground ball to the right side or to the left side. I shouldn't say easy. Somebody's recording this. It's not easy to do. It's very difficult to do. But I think now players, the game's evolved. I think the game continues to evolve over time. Analytics is a huge part of it. Here in Miami, I like to have as much information as possible when making a decision. But at the same time, players have heartbeats. There's some things you can't measure. You can't just automatically take a player from one city and plug them into another and think that you're going to get the same performance because there's pressures that come along with playing the game. So the analytic era came towards the end of my career, and thankfully so because I think they would have got rid of me earlier.
No, I don't know about that. But let's talk about the transition to CEO of the Marlins.
Yeah.
How difficult was it to go from a player to the front office?
It is difficult. I became very vocal about what my next dream was to be part of an ownership group and to build an organization. I became very vocal about that maybe with 10 years left in my career. And what I did was I've lived in Tampa for 20 plus years. I worked out at our minor league player development complex every day in the off season throughout my entire career. I learned as much as I could about player development, scouting. During my career, I made every decision when it comes to marketing, philanthropy, PR, communications. So you're learning bits and pieces of how an organization runs throughout the end of my career and throughout my career. So I wanted to always build something and something I could be proud of. And the challenging part of it is you have no way to impact the outcome of a game. So it's probably one of the most frustrating things I've ever had to watch. But it's been gratifying because we're slowly but surely building the organization that the entire Florida market can be proud of.
Is it everything you expected it to be?
I didn't know what to expect. I think as a player, you don't have an appreciation for how much hard work goes on in the front office. You assume you just show up at a game, you figure the game is sold out and you go and play and everyone goes home and you have an off season, the front office has an off season, that's just how it works. But it doesn't. One thing I did when we first took over the organization is I brought every single member of the front office down to the clubhouse by department. And I had them all introduce themselves, tell the position they have in the organization, how long they've been in the organization, because the players, like I said before, I don't think they have an appreciation for, at least I didn't as a player, have an appreciation for how much people are working behind the scenes to make your job easier.
Right.
And I think the members of the front office appreciated that, and I think the players appreciated the new respect for the front office. And look, we're all a part of the same team. You win as a team, you lose as a team, and it's not just the players on the field.
Has your perspective of the game changed when you look at it through the lens of the front office?
No, it's still difficult, man. It's still difficult. I get a kick out of sometimes when you're watching games with people and they talk about this player and that player and they make it seem like it's easy. I say, man, are you down there playing? You see, you're not down there playing. It's very difficult. So I understand how difficult it is to play the game.
All right. So I want to ask you some things about, again, sitting the front office there. So as a fan, I've always had the best ideas about what Cashman should do and what trades he should make and who he should sign.
Yeah.
What's the most ridiculous thing you've heard from Marlin fans about how you can make the team better?
We're already trying to get the fans to come show up, man. You think I'm going to start... You think I'm going to start talking about ridiculous requests? They have no ridiculous requests. We're going to...
Well said. Very well said. But but honestly, who do you go for advice to get help in running the Marlins?
There's a lot of people. It's not necessarily just advice from people in the baseball or sports world. Turning around a business is something that people face in all different walks of life. So I have always tried to, you know, pick the brains of people who are running organizations. And, you know, look, we have to turn our ship in another direction. You know, it's not just, you know, we took over an organization, a struggling organization that hadn't had a lot of success in the last 15 years. I mean, it hadn't been to the postseason in the last 15 years. The fan base, understandably now, were not coming out to support because they've had their hearts ripped out time after time. They won a World Series in '97, they stripped the team. They won a World Series in 2003, which I'd like to forget, but then they stripped the team. They built a new park, then they stripped the team, and we took over, and people say, well, here we go again. And, you know, my response to that was, look, you know, the team hadn't been successful on the field, and the fan base wasn't coming out to watch and coming out to support, which I understand. So we have to make some changes, and we have to build it the right way. And I think, you know, it takes a while to earn the trust of people. I can't just say, hey, trust me, you don't know me. It takes time to develop trust. And slowly but surely, I think people are starting to trust us, and I'm not going to make any promises I can't keep, and I haven't done that. And everything I said that we were going to do, we've done, but we still got a long way to go.
All right, so we're running a little bit short on time here, but last week must have been an incredible week for you. Can you talk to us and share a little bit about what it was like, one, to get the call from the Hall of Fame and sort of where that ranks amongst all your career achievements?
Man, I honestly tried not to pay much attention to it leading up. I didn't want to talk about it, I didn't want to jinx anything, any opportunities that I may have to get to the Hall of Fame. I was anxious, I was nervous, I was uncomfortable because I had family around and we're sitting there. I mean, literally, you're sitting on the couch with a phone waiting for someone to call. You don't know when they're going to call. You assume there's a time frame. It didn't happen in that time frame. Then you start getting worried. Then
You really couldn't have been worried that you weren't going to get in.
hey, man, it's not up to me. I don't vote. You know what I mean? So it's my career ended 5 years ago, and there's nothing else I can do, right? Everyone has opinions. So no, I didn't expect it. I was hopeful, but I didn't expect it. And then finally, you get a chance to exhale. It's a long time. It's a long career. I played the sport since I was 4 years old, and you know, you have dreams of making it to the major leagues and playing on an all-star team and winning a championship, and but the Hall of Fame doesn't really cross your mind, and it's just, you can't go any further, right? So it was good to have the opportunity to share it with family and friends.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank you.
amazing, and good luck going forward with the Marlins.
Thank you.
But we can't let you off the stage yet without talking about the boss. We
Yeah,
just
sure.
can't. We
Yeah,
just can't.
sure.
So just share with us your favorite story about the boss and the impact he had on you as a player.
Man, okay, impact as a player. Mr. Steinbrenner, in my mind, is one of the greatest owners in all of sports. He is an old football guy, and he had a real tough time understanding that in the course of a 162-game season, you may lose a game. Right? I'm not trying to make you laugh. It's just how he thought. And we had the same mindset, because I think every single time that you take the field, you have an opportunity to win. Every single time. Now, everyone loses, right? In life, you have losses, but you bounce back. But I'm just positive by nature. And we had the same mindset when it came to winning and losing. And, you know, we won a World Series my first year. After that, I said, if we don't win the World Series, then the season's a failure. I still feel that way, because, you know, the worst phrase in all of sports is get them next year. And that's 12 months, and that's a long time to get them next year. And you run out of next years when you're a professional athlete. Your careers are short. You know, what is it? Football, I think the average career is 3 years. Basketball's 4, and baseball's 5. I mean, that's a short period of time, so there's no get them next year. So the boss he preached accountability and responsibility, and never go out and embarrass the Yankee organization. And You know, he would challenge you. He would challenge the best players, and if you weren't performing, he'd let you know. He'd walk into the clubhouse, and if you were playing well, he'd shake your hand. If you weren't, he'd look you up and down and shake his head and go to the next guy. You know what I mean? So we had a great relationship, and you know, I'm had the opportunity to play my entire career in New York because of him and the entire Steinbrenner family.
All right. So we talked a lot about how you stayed cool under pressure. Not everyone here is a baseball player, but they've all faced high pressure situations, whether it be their job, their family, whatever it may be. What advice would you give to the audience on how to get the best out of a high stress situation and perform at the top of their game?
Ooh, get the best out of a high stress, that goes back to being prepared. I mean, you have to be prepared for every possible situation. You look, I'm positive by nature, and I always think the outcome's going to be great, but I'm also prepared for it going in another direction. I don't like to be caught off guard, and surround yourself with good teammates. You know, one thing I'm very good at knowing what I don't know. And I will surround myself with people that are much smarter in different areas, and I have no pride when it comes to that, because I will constantly want to learn from people, and you have to have a good team, whether you're on the field or you're in the front office or you're in another career path. It's just having the great people around you.
All right, thank you for that. So, are you prepared for the speed round then?
Yeah, first of all, who here has been to a game in Miami, before I get out of here? Who's been to a game in Miami? All right, who here has season tickets? That's my guy. But we're gonna, our sales force is in the back. We're gonna get everybody on the way out. But no, come out and support, especially if you're from the South Florida area. I think the bottom line is you need people to come support the team. This is your team. No matter how you look at it, it's your team. Win, lose, draw, good season, bad season. It's your team, so come out and support. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. No. Hey, go for it. It's your stage too. All right, so speed round for you.
I have a bunch of questions for him afterwards. We're flipping this.
All right.
To the next
so
story.
favorite New York food?
Restaurant? Or
Sure,
just
restaurant
food,
or
period?
type of food.
Man, I love Italian food, so I go to a restaurant called Carbone in New York quite a bit.
All right, we have some fans of Carbone as well. Which teammate did you admire the most?
Oh, teammate. Teammate or teammates? Can I pick a few of them?
Sure.
You know, we talk about having great people around you. I grew up with a group of 4 other guys that played our entire careers, with an exception of one pitcher, Andy Pettit, who left for a couple years. We all played together for a long period of time, and these were guys that I trusted, never had to worry about them being prepared to play a game, and never worried about them, their number one focus being winning on the field. So those guys are the ones that are my favorite teammates.
Should we say Posada?
Yeah, Andy Pettit, Jorge Posada, Mariano Rivera, and
Bernie Williams.
Bernie Williams, who doesn't get credit for being a part of this so-called Core 4, just because he wasn't there the last time we won the championship in '09, because he was gone. So,
But he helped stem that tide of trading away the young players because he performed.
We
so
wouldn't
well.
have been there if it wasn't for Bernie.
All right. What player did you hate playing against?
What player did I hate playing against? I wouldn't necessarily say hate playing. I love competing against the best. You know, like in my career, I thought Pedro Martinez had the best stuff of any pitcher I've faced. But I love facing Pedro. Roy Halladay, I could not figure out.
Oh, because that was my next
Roy
one. Who's the
Halladay.
toughest pitcher you faced?
Yeah, I couldn't figure Roy out. He passed away not too long ago, but I couldn't figure the guy out.
All right. And then what would your approach have been to facing Mo?
Same approach. I only faced Mo once in spring training because we came up together. Same approach. My approach stayed the same. I had a real I couldn't guess pitches. I looked fastball down the middle every single pitch.
He didn't throw anything down the middle, though.
He did. It just start inside, you know, and cut out over the plate. But I looked fastball down the middle every single pitch because I had a tough time guessing. Like if I would guess for a slider, no matter where you threw it, you could throw it behind me, I would swing because my mind didn't work.
And who were the worst fans, or not worst fans, but what fans gave you sort of the most grief?
The most, I mean, you know the answer to that question.
Well, we all know it's Boston, but outside of Boston, then let's say.
Well, I didn't say Boston. He said we all know.
I'll happily say it was Boston.
No, you know, I'm going to tell you what. It was the Boston fans. I really appreciated the Boston fans because, look, they were tough Yeah. But you know what? They were passionate about their team. You know what I mean? They were miserable for years. And I said it, they were, yeah. I mean, it's okay to say you're miserable for years. And they'd talk about your mother, your father, your sister, your girlfriend, who they thought your girlfriend was. They talk about everyone. And then I said it before, I think they softened a little bit after they won. But Boston, it was a fun atmosphere to play in Boston.
Well, Derek, we are out of time with that. I want to thank you for joining us here today. How about a nice,
you, guys.
warm Inside ETFs? Thank you, Derek Jeter.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you,
I appreciate it.
guys.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
it's awesome.
Thank you. We'll see you at the park.